Today's Sciencemancy is rather scary. It is about the rise of zombie trials, or clinical trials that seem to be built on fake or manipulated data. So this is a feature article from Nature. But this starts with a story of a researcher called John Carlisle, and he released a startling estimate in October of 2020 in his field of anesthesiology. And he, over 3 years, scrutinized more than 500 studies. And for about a third of them, he got access to the individual participant data, the real raw data of the study. And by studying those spreadsheets, he judged that about 44% of those trials where he got the data contained at least some flawed data, impossible statistics, incorrect calculations, or duplicated numbers or figures. And for 26% of those papers, the problems were so widespread that either the trial was impossible to trust or because the authors were incompetent or faked the data. So Carlisle called these zombie trials because they had the semblance of real research, but closer scrutiny showed they were actually hollow shells masquerading as reliable information. However, when he couldn't access the trial's raw data, then to his seasoned eye, only about 1% of those cases were zombie trials, and maybe 2% had flawed data. So when you couldn't see the actual raw data, which is almost never requested by scientific publications, even a seasoned researcher would have trouble telling that there were problems in this. And so, of course, part of this is because of the notorious paper mill problem of researchers buying faked papers from places that pump them out because of the publish or perish attitude out there. But these are dangerous threats because these are supposed to be clinical trials, and they get folded into meta-analyses where all the data from different trials is combined to come up with medical interventions. And if that data is fake, that's a really big deal. One of the worst examples they have in here is a Japanese bone health researcher, Yoshihiro Sato. He died in 2016, but he fabricated data in dozens of trials of drugs or supplements that might prevent bone fractures. 113 of his papers have been retracted. But already they've been included in 88 systematic reviews. And so they're already incorporated into the data. And usually when you reach out to these people who have done these big reviews, they don't want to go back and redo the work. They already published. There's no juice for going back and correcting things like that. So as someone involved said, it probably diverted people from being given more effective treatment for fracture prevention. And that's the big deal here. It's really hurting people out there in the real world. They go on to talk about drugs being used for bleeding after childbirth and scammy data in those, as well as, do you give a baby steroids during a C-section to help with their later breathing? And it was the biggest trial was this Egyptian data that seemed to have been completely faked. And so some meta-analyses are saying, yes, you should give these steroids, and the World Health Organization is saying, no, you shouldn't, because no one can really tell from the data. And as one of the people who looks at this the most, where they're seeing this most is data coming from countries like Iran, Egypt, Turkey, and China. And yes, this person is getting called a racist for pointing out these countries, but also, as someone who, for my newsletter, goes through all of the science that comes out each week about our favorite plant, when I see studies where I'm like, what is this? Like, what? WTF? This doesn't even make any sense. What's being said here, the words don't make any sense. It's often from one of these countries. So I do see it in my own work as well. And so these zombie trials are a really big deal. And these academic publishers can take steps to try to prevent this and to get the data and to examine it better. But these are businesses, and there's more money in publishing than there is in fact-checking. And so it just goes to show what this stranglehold of our current publishing system, one more of the dangers that it's doing to all of our health, is allowing for these zombie trials to exist.